first astral projection, I believe around 12 or 13. And that was when I immediately realized that this reality is not what they say it is. Renting culture is all about giving up sovereignty through these different taxes of time, attention, obviously money, for convenience, in exchange for convenience, in exchange for just not wanting to, once again, sit with yourself and know who you truly are.
You're renting your own data.
So the answer isn't to reject this technology, it's to own the architecture ourselves. It's not anti-tech, it's pro-ownership. The classic myth of Prometheus, but they're trying to steal the fire from the gods through technology to become gods themselves.
Being the extractor, the parasite.
Trust in your ability to know what truth is by going inside, and that just requires putting that first step forward. And then the steps will get easier, right?
All right, another episode in the bucket here. So I got Mike Winnr joining me, DJ Mike Winnr, good friend. We've known each other for 4 years now, 4 or 5 years probably.
I would say probably got introduced around the COVIDiot era, maybe through our mutual friend Alex Zek. And then we got to hang in Miami at an event back in, I think that was 2022, that Sayer G invited us out to, which was super fun. And yeah, man, we've just been flowing in the same circles. You came out to Music and Sky, which was awesome, and got to see what we're doing there. And then we've hung at Confluence and these other events. So yeah, it's probably been like 5-6 years now almost.
When I first met you, first of all, your handle is DJ Mike Winnr. So it's a DJ. And then I started talking to you and you're like, oh no, I'm Alpha Vedic and I'm doing this farming stuff and coffee. And I'm like, oh, this also. And then all of a sudden it was Qortal and like crypto. And I'm like, oh, I like this guy. I need to be his friend. Just so many solutions and things you're thinking of and being a part of. And my goal in my own journey is connecting and supporting those that are building bridges. And you really are doing a lot in what you're trying to accomplish. But a little bit about you. I have a little bio here. Mike has a bachelor's degree in film studies and history from University of California in Santa Barbara. Mike aims to elevate the conversation of global consciousness through captivating and positive storytelling processes, new decentralized technologies, and life-changing health and freedom festivals where humans get to be humans again. His unique perspective and positive outlook on the current world condition is a refreshing breath from the often negative nihilistic take so common in today's materialistic world. So Mike, I want my audience to get to know you a little bit better. And one of the first questions I like to ask is, how did you get here? What is your journey that got you to this point? And usually what I love to ask is, what was that red pill moment? What was that moment in your life that you're like, something weird going on here? I got to start looking at it from a different lens.
Oh, man. I don't know if there was a specific red pill moment. I think I came into this realm questioning from the very get-go. I just never felt comfortable, even as a little kid. I was always lost in my imagination. I remember my father would always tell me, hey, get your head out of the clouds. You know, he would get frustrated because I just was not very pragmatic or practical in terms of how I dealt with reality. And I think now he really appreciates my creativity and where I've taken it. And so from a very young age, I just didn't feel like I fit in. And then it was actually thanks to my father in my early teens because he had gotten his master's in psychology after being in the Navy and had learned about some alternative concepts around consciousness and specifically OBEs, out-of-body experiences, and astral projection. And he had started to talk to my sister and I about this when I was very young and gave me a book about how to astral project. And basically I started reading that and I had my first astral projection, I believe around 12 or 13. And that was when I immediately realized that this reality is not what they say it is. This is not some sort of materialistic, magic BB, atomic place of just pure materiality, but there's something far more mysterious and miraculous around consciousness and around who we really are. And that led me down the primrose path towards conspiracy culture. And another book that really woke me up was The Creature from Jekyll Island, The True History of the Fed. When I was about 17 or 18, my father gave that to me. And that blew my mind around the nature of money and government and how everything is debt based in the current modern financial system. And that really just helped me see through a lot of the fiction that we talk about in the law world that drives this public place, right? That we think is reality when we come from a more conventional mindset. So, yeah, then I started listening to people like Alex Jones and kind of got it deep into alien conspiracy culture as a late teen in the rave scene because I had become a DJ. So that all kind of went hand in hand. And then my first few experiences with taking magic mushrooms really opened my mind to these other realms that I already knew existed, but in just a more, I don't know, just a broader way in terms of seeing it actually interface with the physical reality there when I'm tripping balls in college. And then, yeah, I met Dr. Bear Lando through his son, who's one of my best friends, through the DJ culture of all things in Santa Barbara. And then he really woke me up to the whole lie around germ theory. And this was early 2000s. I had dealt with a lot of health problems, Otto, as a kid, specifically around strep throat. I had chronic strep throat that I was dealing with almost annually and was doing the typical antibiotic cycle where it would fix the symptoms and then they would come flaring back worse the next year. And so he woke me up to the whole fraud around the virus and germ theory, which really, really blew my mind. It took me a while, to be honest, to wrap my head around and really believe in that whole concept because I was so inundated with allopathic medicine. I mean, my mom ran hospitals. She was the CEO at one point at UCI at the University of California Irvine Medical Center and had run emergency departments and stuff. So my whole life I was hanging out in hospitals after school, hanging out with doctors and nurses. And I just thought that was the reality. So to learn that this idea of allopathy is in the same way that the debt money system keeps people in debt financially, the allopathic system keeps people in debt through, for their health. That really blew my mind. And then that led me to eventually help found Alpha Vedic and then get into the podcast circuit and all that. But I was also just involved with lots of different events and things that all coalesced with music and sky, to be honest, because it was my media background. I had gone to film school, worked in Hollywood for almost a decade on the fringes of Hollywood, really tried to be a reality TV producer, was a showrunner at one point, was in the rooms at MTV and VH1 and E! Entertainment Television, trying to live that dream and make documentary television, worked in the music industry. And the whole time I had been DJing and in all these other alternative spaces. And really, I found that I couldn't find success in those conventional mediascapes because that wasn't my hero's journey. My hero's journey was to take me on a completely different path towards what I'm doing now, which is working in these alternative circles around decentralization, around true health and wellness, and helping people come together that are resonating on this path to develop solutions to create a better world.
Ooh, that was so well said. I think it's so important to get those layers in order because whether you're talking about the blockchain space or the structuring stuff in the private, we have to recreate those relationships, recreate how we identify, how we relate to these systems. What would you say has been the most difficult part of that process? If you were to talk to someone that is trying to get, like, what practices would you suggest to be able to get into that kind of alignment, to see that clarity? Because it seems like you've been through a life of awareness and red pills, just one thing after another.
It is a journey, and I feel like a lot of people are going through it right now, which is really exciting. And I'm really enjoying watching even old friends now that are hitting me up through Instagram or text about some conspiracy concepts that I maybe was super into 20 years ago. And it's okay. You're in first grade right now. That's good. That's good. You're asking questions. And I think asking questions is like in equity. We talk about the art of inquiry, right? And that is a very first important step. And those first questions should be about who you are and really, why am I here? And who am I really? And I think we're so indoctrinated to outsource to these large systems and to people of authority to answer those questions. And I think the biggest hurdle for many is trusting in themselves, trusting that they got this, that they have the truth within them, and not needing to even go on the internet and search for it, but to actually get in silence, get into a space where you're okay with being quiet with your thoughts and seek the truth within in this time of noise and distraction and such easy access to information, right? We're overflowing with information thanks to the internet. It's become very difficult for people to get into that space. And so I would say that, first and foremost, is something people need to work on. And I was fortunate enough, actually, when my wife was pregnant with our first child, who just turned 15, which is just mind-blowing to me. We took a meditation class on for childbirth because she wanted to have a natural birth. And that was really cool. We were living in San Francisco, and I got to learn some fundamentals around classic meditation and mindfulness. It was really just classic mindfulness. And that was the first time that I had sought my consciousness in that way versus the more sort of active way I was doing to try to do astral projection, which was more using my imagination and sort of being awake while asleep. And so I had played with my consciousness for a long time, but I hadn't sought silence in that way, and just being still and pushing all the thoughts out and just being with me. And that was extremely uncomfortable for a very long time, but that's a daily practice that I do every morning with my yoga and stretching and such, is just finding that, even if it's just 15, 20 minutes of just trying to exist without thinking, really without creating thoughts, which is really a key to, I believe, our sovereignty and evolution here as a living man or woman, is being able to control our reality by mastering our thoughts. But first and foremost, we have to know how to stop the thoughts from just spiraling out of control from all the stimulus we get and from our subconscious and all that. So I would say, yeah, that first and foremost is probably the hardest thing for people to master.
I mean, especially with all the awesome technology we have available to us, it's so hard. Like this little black mirror, it might as well be like embedded in my hand because it's always there. But you're right. I think that's a huge part of what I try to teach in the academy, is recreating that dependency, all the dependency that we've normalized in our lives. And I bet if we all sat down and just took a moment and went down and created a list of the things we are dependent on, whether it's because of this is the only system I know to use, or because I can't help myself. I try to sit still for 5 minutes and I reach for my phone. So there is something to that. And I saw in one of your presentations, you called it, it's a combination of entrepreneur's dilemma and sovereignty tax. And I think it has to do with this, right? The dependency that we create on these systems, especially the ones that are being given to us for quote unquote free. And what kind of freedom really is. Oh, I just got fireworks behind me. That's amazing.
Freedom.
Freedom. That was
That's
on point. But yeah, we have all this dependency that's creating these layers of just a dependency, especially when the things are free. So yeah, if you can speak on that, like why is it important that we look at the technologies that we're using so that we're not being controlled in that way? What does that actually mean?
Yeah, I really believe we're at a convergence point. AI being that profound technological innovation that isn't new. I actually believe AI has been around for thousands of years. I believe maybe the oracles of Delphi were tapping into that. Nostradamus, right? These artificial intelligences that are essentially, it's predictive programming in a way that's using statistics to really make it seem like there's an intelligence there, but it's really just just another example of a technology that is taking from our own output and spitting it back to us. And yeah, but we are at a convergence point right now where, because of the digital age that we're in, we are able to more easily access this AI, and because of the internet and all this. And so I think we do have a potential to generate more abundance than any civilization seen in a very long time, mainly because we've been forced into scarcity for so long. And whether you believe in the idea of Tartaria or past Atlantis or Lemuria and these past civilizations that actually lived in more abundance or not, I do believe that we go through these cycles, and we've had abundance in the past. And right now we are in a peak of scarcity, whether that's manufactured by large systems or evildoers, or just through our own forgetfulness of who we really are, which is really where I go. It's this convergence point. And so, we have an opportunity here because AI is a tool, but the people that are lost themselves, that are these like techno bros, right? That they're building the pipes that want to capture it all, right? They want to own your data, your AI, your money, your communication, your commerce. They want to own it all because they're in fear. They don't understand who they truly are. And so they are outsourcing to this technology. And with that comes, they're really smart, because what they do is they provide us with this, through these pipes that they've created, this technology in a way that doesn't involve much. It doesn't involve a lot of effort and sweat on our behalf. It's all convenient, right?
Mhm.
And so the answer isn't to reject this technology. It's to own the architecture ourselves. It's to do the sweat. It's to toil a little bit. And that's like what Qortal's about. And that's what I believe the future of AI, which will be a decentralized AI, is all about. That's what crypto native commerce is about, and having and owning your own coin, right? Your keys, right? It's not anti-tech, it's pro ownership. And obviously, we're seeing right now this rental economy explode. We've seen it with the gig economy. We've seen it with the cloud infrastructure that's developed over the last 20 years and the internet. We're seeing it in the physical world, of course, with people. It's very difficult to own a home anymore. The debt-based system and the financial system is based on this, everything. And then people are giving their spirituality away through. So this is old as can be, because literally the Catholic Church was all about renting your soul for indulgences, right? To get time out of hell or out of purgatory. So, yeah, but this renting culture is all about giving up sovereignty through these different taxes of time, attention, obviously money, for convenience, in exchange for convenience, and in exchange for just not wanting to, once again, sit with yourself and know who you truly are. And I do feel like one of the most important solutions, Otto, is entrepreneurship moving forward, especially as we're looking at this sort of reshaping of how society will be working economically, socially, politically with this emergence of this technology, because the techno bros are taking over. Trump has basically handed the keys to them. I believe the whole war in Iran is all about this. I believe most of the political chicanery and dramas and stage plays are about handing the keys over to the techno bros to create this renting economy, so that the very few can own and the majority have no more ownership of anything. And so that's a scary thought, right? That's a scary thought. So, but the thing is, once again, they're doing this out of fear and out of lack of true knowledge and wisdom of who they really are. And because they believe that somehow they can merge their consciousness with machine, right? They are the Prometheans. They must know the myth, but clearly they don't understand what the myth is about. We can get into that a little bit, the classic myth of Prometheus, but they're trying to steal the fire from the gods through technology to become gods themselves. And that is against natural law. And they will be tied to that rock, and that eagle will be picking at their liver, and that eagle being their own ego, picking at their liver and really destroying their karmic ability to reincarnate in a way that, and they know this, they're giving away their actual true soul's ability to reincarnate in a beautiful new life. And so they're trying to hold on to this physical life as long as they can due to the evils that they've done. And it's laughable. It's a joke. It's, when you really look at it, it's, wow, these guys are idiots. And you see it with how ridiculous the system is in terms of the centralization and how fragile it is, and how it's eating itself alive, and how the debt system even is in potential I'd love to get into this a little bit, Otto, because the idea of doing AI correctly could really destabilize debt in many ways, and capitalism and all that. So yeah, they're on shaky ground. And that's why traditionally they've used bombs and the military to scare us into following their guidelines and being in their prison, if you want to call it that. And they've realized that now, instead of bombs and kinetic warfare, they want to just have our attention trapped in their sort of technosphere, in this virtual landscape and all that, and renting from them. And that's their plan, but it's not accordance to natural law. It's not in accordance to how humans are supposed to interact and be. And so they're really going up against the hill. And our job's actually quite easy because we're in the flow of reality. And so what I talked about, like at Confluence, was about walking across the bridge back towards being real humans, but using technology in the right way to do that, through open source means, through decentralization, and also through community, right? And working together, because the one element we really need to be careful about when we talk about sovereignty and taking back this technology and stuff is not falling in the trap of being stuck on our own island. Individual rights are important, but we need to do that within a sound, holistic collective.
Yeah. That's the only way. Humans that want to cut and run and go live in the jungle by themselves, that's not what humans like. We need to have community. We need to be able to connect and deepen relationships and create relationships in the first place. But you hit on something really interesting. I want to go back into the conversation that you said we should talk about. But basically, the technology, what I've noticed and how you've described it, is right now the technologies that are available to us were developed by developers that really didn't try to create an awareness of what was happening in this reality. They're just like, oh, I learned this in school. This is how you should do it. Let's do it this way. I've seen that in the monetary system with traditional banking concepts built into blockchain, that in the medical field. It's just what they were taught.
Yes.
I also believe that technology is not just these things, right? We have a physical technology here. This is a technology, this body. And it's like even the interpretation of technology itself is, whoa, we're probably perceiving it a little differently. And I agree with you. I think there's like a bastardization of what is supposed to flow in a natural way to create the control, which is being facilitated by these things that are being created. What would you say is the way then that we intend? I also believe we're alchemizers. We can alchemize things. We can take things that currently exist and use it for good. But how would you describe it to someone that is asking the question, well, how do we use these technologies that they're creating for our benefit? If they created it, how do we properly use these concepts that we were taught, but maybe flip it in a way that benefits us instead of siphoning from us?
Yeah. Technology comes from Techne. I believe it's the Greek, which means art. So it's literally the study of art, the study of our own art, because technology really is, like you said, inherent to everything we do, because it is the externalization of imagination, right? And so our bodies are the externalization of God's imagination. And it really are the greatest technology. And you're right, our bodies work through transmutation. We are transmuting the elements constantly and within ourselves. And yes, we often talked a lot about when I was on the AlphaCast and Alpha Vedic, is that we are moving into an age of transmutation again, which is really exciting. And so that's a really important concept when it comes to technology and our interaction with it. How can we transmute what's in front of us for our own good and for our own imagination and our own output? That being said, centralized AI, centralized social media, all this technology that is coming from a mindset that is not holistic, that is not in tune with natural law, which is not looking out for the good of the user, but is looking to profit, control, and dominate, that is an issue, right? And so we can transmute it by using, for instance, Instagram to share information that will wake people up to a point. It's I often talk about crossing the bridge towards true sovereign technology. And we can use that to a point, but still, why do you think, Otto, that and this has been my experience, that on platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, they're not censoring as much as they did during like the COVID era? They seem like I'm seeing a lot of conspiracy culture and a lot of really interesting stuff on Instagram. and TikTok. And it's like, whoa, that's channels on there not being banned. It's talking about the Fed. It's talking about the corruption of Donald Trump. And it's like, why is that? That's because they want your damn attention, whatever way they can get it, because it's not about the information anymore. In terms of getting out, they already know it's out there. It's about capturing your attention and then capturing as much information into their centralized systems so they can continue to create the digital techno sphere that they want to put us into, hence the AI data centers that are erupting everywhere. They have so much hubris. They think they're gods, that they don't think, no matter at this point, no matter how much awakening we have is going to matter, because they've already set the prison, right? And you see this with the AI centers coming up with like O'Leary in Utah, which is all over the news right now. And nobody wants it there, right? And it's going to be the size of 3 Manhattans, taking up double the entire electrical energy of the entire state. And it's too bad it's happening, right? Because this is what's good for you guys. Like these tech bros talk down to us like we're children. And so the idea, once again, is that they don't care about our consciousness or awakening anymore, because they feel like they've already got their plan set. So what do we do? Because once again, going back to, they actually really don't know much, right? So we don't want to fall into the trap of just thinking we can transmute their own systems, because their systems are weapon systems. But we can easily create better stuff in alignment with natural law, with alignment with principles around abundance and collaboration, cooperation. So that's what I'm sort of stressing to people is walk across that bridge. Sure, use Google as you need to, use Apple as you need to, but then start to look into these open source, decentralized solutions that are doing the same sort of output, but are doing it in a way that where you own the information, you own the software, you own your data. They're holistically inclined, like a Qortal, that are trying to play within the more natural realm, and then start to move down that. It might take more effort, but karmically, one, it's going to be a lot better for you. And then two, it's going to start to decrease the pressures of those sovereignty, taxes on your time, taxes on your money, nickel and diming you on all these service costs. And then also the greater repercussions of things like the AI data centers, like all of the surveillance coming down upon us. Really, the solution is each individual node, each individual person decoupling from these systems bit by bit. And so that's like what my sovereign stack that I put out, which I'm happy for you to share to your community, is all about. It's about like, how can we step by step get off using something like a Facebook or like WhatsApp or Google, Gmail, getting off Instagram, getting off Google Analytics, all of these things we use to run our business. And then how can we use AI in the right way to set all this open source decentralized stuff up so we can more easily use it? Because that's been one of the big hurdles for people. They want to do this, but they're like, I don't even know where to start. How the hell would I go into something like Qortal, or how the heck would I set up an above phone? And now, thanks to AI, we have a personal assistant that's technologically savvy, that lives in that realm, that can really help us in amazing ways to walk across that bridge.
Merlin, right? That's the name of it.
Merlin's my guy.
I want to talk about that at the end here in a little bit. But yeah, I think this is great. If you guys want to see that presentation, I'm going to link it in the captions in the show notes, so you can take a look there. But yeah, I love the way you broke it down and gave the comparisons of the current platforms and some alternatives, some practical steps that we can start taking. And my own journey, I've realized that there has been a lot of attempt at this, especially in the crypto space. So I've been not necessarily cautious, but it's a transition. Like, we're transitioning to these new systems. So you don't want to like completely cut and run from everything that you're currently in and created an audience in. You want to start.
Well, that was one thing I was talking about, Otto. Really important. Sorry to interrupt, cut you off, but I just wanted to, on that tip, this idea of purity spiraling, right? We got to be really cautious, just in the same way in the truther world, people purity spiraling into being like not I kind of talked about it on stage at Confluence. It's if you really follow that mindset, then you can't even be here because the ground you're stepping on is stolen from indigenous people. The air you're breathing in is poisoned by chemtrails. All the food you touch is somehow either stolen from an animal that was murdered or poisoned by a large corporation. And so you can't even be here. The same with technology. It's if you purity spiral right out of the gates and need to be perfect with everything you touch, you won't use technology. And I'm not a Luddite. I'm not here I'm actually sometimes romantically want to be a Luddite and just want to live deep in nature.
What is that? What's a Luddite?
A Luddite is this, it was a kind of like an Amish people that in the late 19th and 20th century who during the, it was actually, they were like an Amish people that were basically really concerned. I believe it was like the cotton gin that was coming about and like early industrial equipment that was changing putting man into the factory and turning us into machine. And they denied all that. They said, we want nothing to do with that. We are going to just focus on living in nature and living in the old school way that you lived in like the Middle Ages, pre-industrial age, basically living. And they were called the Luddites. And there's something to that, though. People in the technology world in Silicon Valley throw that euphemism around. Oh, don't be a Luddite. But there's something really powerful, too, about that perspective, right? And so that's something that I always try to bring into working with technology, like how we built out Qortal, was like there's some really important philosophical standing there in terms of being with nature, because really what we're looking at in the end is what the tech bros are doing is they're trying to use technology to dominate nature. And we're seeing nature really hurting because of it. Ironically, they're supposed to be also like DEI environmentalists. And yet these, clearly not, as they fly all over the world to their remote vacation destinations. And these AI data centers are obviously going to eviscerate the local ecology of the places they're put in. But that being said, yeah, the Luddite thing is really interesting because how can we balance nature with technology? And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that whole purity spiraling thing is so important because people, when they hear this, might do that and freak out and go, I got to get off everything. It's no, take a breath, go meditate first, and then start to come up with a strategy where you can move across that bridge towards more sovereign technology.
Yes. And one thing that I noticed with everyone that has been coming to my academy is there's two types of individuals when they're coming in. They're either trying to run away from something, right? And I think it's like heading towards that spiral. I got to just disconnect from everything. And then there's the individual that's like coming in as the creator. And I need to find what alternatives I have so that I can express value through it. So it's rather than being the extractor, the parasite, you're being the creator, the expression of value and energy. This is oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that's where we're moving. We're moving into a more creator-based environment for an economy, a marketplace. AI will be the mimicker. It will be doing the heavy lifting. AI cannot create because it can't tap into the ether. It's not truly conscious, but it can create based upon our input. It requires our input. But this is going to open up people who are asking this question about who I am and what am I here for. It's going to open up some really amazing avenues by using this technology in the right way.
Yeah. And what I was going to say, just to compound on that, is I think the Luddite mindset is what's most important, not necessarily all technology is evil, let's step away from it. I think it's more about holding on to the natural version of yourself and who you are in relationship to these technologies. And then you can decide how to utilize it, right? How to use that technology as the creator, as the expression of value. And I can give you something practical that I teach my students is the difference between legal ownership versus possession-based ownership. And so it's 9/10 of the law is possession. So then we have obviously the things that we can hold in our hands. My phone, that's my possession. That's mine. I'm actually the owner. But then we talk about data, crypto, blockchain. We talk about these things that we can't really see or touch with our senses per se. But there are ways, or like data for videos, so you're not censored. There are ways to be in a possession-based ownership of those assets. in that content, rather than just freely using these centralized versions where you're renting. You're renting your own data, basically.
And also what you're doing is you're renting your intellect. That's what's trippy, is you're losing cognitive sovereignty. If you are dependent, and this, I'm seeing this with so many people that are in love with AI, but they're using the OpenAI ChatGPT interface or Claude interface. And a lot of people were even at Confluence talking about Claude coding. Okay, it's powerful. I use it, but I'm walking across the bridge towards having my own Claude, my own, what's called open code, using that on my own metal, on my own machine. That being said, beyond that, when I think why, because when you're using ChatGPT, the costs far outweigh your $20 subscription. You know that they are losing money, but they're making up for it, one, through the fraud of the market system of the private public partnership, and then using the stock market and using war and all these things to prop up their valuation, of course. But the main thing, and this is what the NSA is all about, and what everything's all about, is capturing as much data as they can from you. So every time you're prompting ChatGPT, that's going into their centralized databases, their centralized server farm, and putting that into full projections of reality. And you've probably heard of digital twinning and all of these things, and running these models so that essentially you're inside this closed corporate AI that is owning your intellect. And I was just on a podcast with Chance Garton and Interverse, and we were talking about how people are feeling dumber by using these, by just depending upon AI in the wrong way. And that's on purpose. That's by design. And so we need to be really careful about that, because not only do we need to own the infrastructure, but we need to get back to being free thinkers. And once again, going back to that quiet space, reading books, coming up with ideas ourselves, versus just immediately going to the black screen or to the computer screen to get all our answers from AI.
Oh, talk about a soul suck. It's going to suck your soul into it if you keep asking it to create things for you. Yeah. It's just a mirror, guys. It's just a mirror that's just repeating what it sees and hears. So let's talk a little bit about these solutions, these alternative solutions, specifically with Qortal. I've heard about Qortal for a while. I believe they launched in 2020, or the chain launched in 2020.
Yep.
And I remember seeing some videos and updates on it in 2023, but I haven't been following along with it. But I know you guys have been, it's been going. So to tell me what it is, if you can, and you can be a little technical. We have a lot of people that listen that are already crypto friendly and have an awareness of this kind of discussion. So yeah, go into a little bit what Qortal is and what kind of solutions you guys have made.
Yeah, so Qortal was a reaction to what we saw, the centralizing of crypto, not only through the sort of the ICO boom of 2014 through 17, which was quite alarming, and then the emergence of the proof of stake consensus, which was really just creating oligarchies, right? Just essentially a consensus where it was based upon how much money you owned. Isn't that like how the debt system runs already? Isn't that what we're trying to combat? And then even with Bitcoin, because we're talking about centralization here of these big server farms, and Bitcoin originally was designed where you mine the coin in your own, at your house as an individual node. The node was the miner, right? And then with the emergence of the blockchain wars and ASIC mining, really, and this was the developers hijacking Bitcoin, we saw a worrisome trend of centralization around mining and around the control of the asset through centralized marketplaces, through these exchanges. And then the ownership disparity, like where now all of a sudden the oligarchs that Bitcoin was aiming to counter in terms of owning, a lot of the assets, were taking control, and also just criminal elements. And so we wanted to get back to first principles of where the cypherpunks were coming from in the 90s, around in the 80s, around the importance of decentralization, open source, and distributed money. And not only that, but also just seeing that even if you have a solid consensus through proof of work, and you are using the coin appropriately, you're still in an ecosystem, i.e. the internet, that is being controlled and centralized and dominated by the debt system. Ironically, most of Bitcoin is run by the debt system because people, how do they mine? They mine by buying ASICs that they typically get through either some venture capital, some private equity, or something based around the debt system, which is so ironic, right? Like it's actually a kind of a crux of it. It's like the chicken or the egg syndrome. It's like, how do you make the coin if you need the coin to buy the infrastructure to make the coin? Right. So anyways, the idea around Qortal was to, one, how can we make it get back to first principles and create a consensus that's more tied into nature? And what is something that everybody must face in terms of reality here that is equalized across all races, creeds, and social economic strata? And that's time. I don't know if anybody can outrace time as of now. Maybe there's some time travelers. You see some on TikTok. I don't know what they're all about, if that's real or not. But for me, it's wow, that was a big light bulb that went off in my head. And not that I came up with this myself. I was just I am full transparency, one of the co-founders of Qortal, but I did not come up with the consensus model or anything. It was actually through some really brilliant minds that had been working in blockchain and decentralized technology for a long time. But I am the philosopher of the group. I'm trying to always keep our purity, if you will, not that we want a purity spiral, but our core philosophical standards met at all times, which we have. And what that means is that we're open source, community driven, never taken any VC, never corporatized, never trademarked, never put into any sort of public commercial system. It's literally just code that's open source, right? Developed by anonymous developers with a core vision that is about creating a new internet. So around first principles. So what I mean by that is it's a P2P driven network that has a blockchain as its spine to keep a valid source of truth, using time as the consensus and as the economic model. That's called minting. And what that does is instead of having a competition scarcity model like Bitcoin, where everyone's mining for the next coin to maintain consensus, which is brilliant and it makes sense and it works. Obviously, proof of work is genius, even though there are questions about if it came from, Intel and all that, deep within the intelligence operations of the United States. That being said, it doesn't matter because in the end, it's still proof of work works where you need it. And I'm an advocate. I think it has its place, just so you know. I dollar cost average Bitcoin every week. But with Qortal, we wanted to create that infrastructure to fix the issue on the internet itself. The internet having become in the cloud controlled by major corporations, the AWS and Azure, the cloud, Microsoft and Amazon running most of that infrastructure. And then the big tech bros, once again, getting their hands on everything in the domain naming system and everything. It's if you have something like Bitcoin, but you're forced to use a centralized ecosystem, then they can turn it off in all sorts of other ways and control it and start to diminish the value of a decentralized economic coin like that. So that's what Qortals is. We're 6 years in. It's a fully decentralized node-to-node network where you can do anything on it. Anything you pretty much can do on the internet, you can do on Qortal. We have a P2P email system called Qmail that is the most encrypted and secure form of communication on the planet. I'll say that right now, or in the realm. And that's because there's no middleman. There's no mail server involved, right? So there's like with Proton Mail, which is part of on my sovereignty stack as a means to cross that bridge. That is a much more secure form of email communication than using Gmail or Hotmail or one of those traditional email services. And they say that they are about sovereignty, but they do have weird VC interests coming in from UN connected people and World Economic Forum people. And I do know people during the COVID scam era that had their accounts shut down. And so you're still dealing with a middleman that's running the mail server, the email server. Mm-hmm. With Qortal, if you use Qmail, it literally takes your email information data, it encrypts it, and point to point sends it from your node that is on your computer directly to the node you're sending to, which then when they basically open up their email, their Qmail, they have a hash that they run to decrypt that email. So it's point to point. There's no middleman in the middle. And that's how everything works on Qortal. For instance, QTube is a Q app on there that mimics YouTube. However, instead of relying upon Google's or Alphabet's cloud's infrastructure to watch the videos, which is convenient because it's streaming, but also they can, with a flip of a finger, cut that information off, as we saw a lot during COVID. And I mean, it still happens. This is immutable because it is on a machine, the originator's machine. It's all the information's hashed, but the data is saved on that machine. It goes through what's called the Qortal data network, which then basically allows for that information to be chunked, encrypted, and then spread across the entire network based upon how many people are following you on your QTube account. So the more followers you have, the more redundant and the faster it gets. So
That's genius. Wow, you just
so,
blew my mind. That's the first time I've heard it done that way. That's really cool.
So it's done this way, like in a classic, like torrent, right? That's how torrents work. If you've ever used LimeWire back in the day, or SoulSeek, which is what I used to get a lot of my DJ music. But the difference here is that we have
go to the top of the list. If the more people had that specific file, you'd have it at the top of the list because then it could download faster. Yep, I remember that.
Yeah, and the difference is that it's it's chunking it apart and taking it from multiple nodes at the same time. So it's not, and this has been the new QDN advances we've made over this last year, thanks to brilliant devs that have really put their heart, soul into this for almost no money. And shout out to Phil, who just did an amazing job with this, who's a Qortal developer. And of course, Jason Crow and the whole team there. And but what's cool about it, is that we have a blockchain infrastructure that's the universal source of truth as well. So that not that ownership is in the same way, because people are actually taking that data and putting it on their machine as a redundant copy. So they're owning it as well. But the original poster is on the blockchain as getting credit for that person who put that data up. And so it's a different mindset. It's not so much about IP, but it's still about having a record, right? And then an acknowledgement in the same way you would do on the GitHub repository for open source software. But now what it's doing is it's taking out the middleman. It's taking out also any of the control vectors, the top-down control system, and spreading that data across the entire network. And then you also have the ability, because we have a coin, CORT, which is not a token, it's a coin, right? So we're not wrapping stuff in ETH, nonsense like that. It's a coin that is run by consensus. This is very important to understand, because most, quote unquote, what people think are coins are tokens that are smart contracts, like on the Ethereum blockchain, that aren't being run by consensus, which means if developers can mess with it, the contract can be messed with, the software can be messed with, and you can lose your money. That's why I'm only an advocate for Bitcoin and Qortal, and I like Monero and a couple other that are actually running proper consensus and are proper coins. That being said, you can tip that person on QTube. Hey, thank you, and send them some of your CORT that you've earned by supporting the network over time. So that's the whole other thing about Qortal, is how do you get coin? But you get coin through minting, which is you prove yourself over time to get into a minting pool. And by running a full node over time, you go through an actual, we have what would you call it? It's like a delegated, not even delegated, but because it's kind of like an elder's circle, if you will, of people who have been on the chain for a long time that vote to see if you get the ability to start minting. Because we did have a problem.
Like a DAO. You have a DAO.
Yeah, kind of like a DAO. But Qortal's definitely not a DAO, in that it's not an autonomous organization where consensus or all ideas about the coin are run by the community, in that it's got set, like Bitcoin, right? It's got set code for the consensus and all of that. So it can't shift and change, but there's elements that can be voted. And so there's a leveling system that basically uses time to give you weight on the chain. So the longer that you run a node over a certain amount of blocks, you go up in levels, right? I've been running a node since we started. So I'm level 8 or 9 or whatever. And so with that, you get a little bit more reward of the general pot. So every block shares in the reward. So it's a collaborative share. So instead of winning a block, you actually share. And the higher level you are, the more of the pool you're in. It's one big mining pool, basically. And so the higher the level you're in for how long you've proven yourself over time, the more weight you get to vote. If you do want to use voting in your community, right? Or in your group or whatever, and also the more coin you get. And then you can use that coin to go, and it also, that coin runs the blockchain. So it runs if you want to comment or in any of these Q apps. There's a whole ecosystem. There's a whole app ecosystem. I don't know how many apps there are. There's an app there's Quitter that is replicated the idea of Twitter. There's like a SoundCloud type one. We're about to launch a Substack type Q app on there that will allow you to do subscriptions and have people pay to join your content and stuff like that without the censorship, right? Because it's censorship-proof. It's not censorship like even Odyssey. They can't claim that they're censorship-proof because they are run on the World Wide Web, and there's other elements where they have a corporation and tied to them, and I think it might be a nonprofit, but they still have certain forces at play that could potentially put stressors on them to take down a channel, right? With Qortal, we're in the Wild West, bro. Basically, if you don't like something, you block it, but there's nothing getting censored on there. Now, it's a testament to the community that it's not a bunch of porn and like deathcore and videos on there. It's all pretty much just awakened, cool. There's a lot of conspiracy stuff and like right-leaning conservative stuff on there and stuff like that on like QTube. But really shows you that when you're in a place of true freedom and a place that respects natural law, it doesn't just go to the least common denominator of just nonsense, right? Which is what the conventional world wants us to think. If we don't have the specialists or the people in charge, that we're going to fall into chaos and start killing each other.
So do you have an element of trust for the people that join to not upload that kind of stuff, or is there a mechanism for that?
Nope. Nope. So basically, this is the thing, though. So in order to upload things, you need CORT first and foremost, right? Because everything costs a little bit of CORT because it's being put on the blockchain, not the data itself, but anytime you're hashing whether it be a comment or it's the metadata, right? And so there are transactional costs to doing things. So that is a bit of a protection, because if you're going to just scam, you're going to need to come in with money to do that. You also have the blocking ability. So anything you don't like, you can block, because once again, it is on a blockchain. That is a record, right? So you're not totally anonymous. Now, you're anonymous in the sense that there's no KYC, of course. There's nothing tied. You don't have to show an ID to get in there or anything. It is true first principles. It's totally open source, and it's totally, I'm blanking on the word, Otto, where anybody can access it at any time. Permissionless, thank you. It's totally permissionless. However, you can create as many accounts as you want. And then also there's the naming structure. So like domain names, you can buy to have your name attached to your address, and there's a name marketplace where you can buy. And I would go do this right now. Go buy Otto Gomes. It's 3 CORT, which is about 90 cents, and then you are the only Otto Gomes on the chain. That actually goes across, which is pretty cool. It goes across the entire ecosystem. So as you move into any apps, you don't have to sign up for the app. You don't have to put anything. You're just now Otto in that app. And it follows you everywhere you go. And that's your wallet. That's everything. And so if you're a dick and you are doing things that are inappropriate, you're going to obviously get flagged by people in the community, and everyone's going to block you, and you're not going to have discoverability and all that. You can go create another account and then try to purchase a different name if you want, because people don't really respect in the ecosystem just the addresses. You can run around the ecosystem with just your address, but people tend to ignore those. They only really interact in the groups, in the chat, etc., to names, because we know you're trying to be real in the community and the ecosystem. And so if you are doing things that are inappropriate in these apps tied to your name, then people will block you, and you just won't have an ability to really spread whatever you want to do.
I love it.
That makes sense.
I love it. I mean, totally get it. And I think that's, you're moving into a reality that I want, which is we take care of it. The community comes together and protects the community. Yes. Yeah. Good. We don't need daddy government or daddy whoever to come in and make us feel safe. Thank you. I love that. Do you need is it something you can download to your regular computer, or is there a separate device that you need to get to be a part of this?
It's part of that permissionless element to it is that it works on anything. So you can run it on an old laptop. You can run it on a Raspberry Pi. You do need a processor, a hard drive, like a traditional type of CPU setup. Very popular in the community is running it on Linux, but you can run it on Mac, you can run it on Windows. And so there's 2 bits of software that you need. You don't have to have, but it makes it most convenient. So you have the core. That's what you are required to use. That's what you download to actually get you synced up with the blockchain. And we use a bunch of new kind of technology hacks so that traditionally on a true decentralized blockchain, it could take, depending on how long the blockchain is, like days and days to sync, right?
Yeah. So normal.
Yeah, but we actually prune it and we use a zip file kind of technology. So you can actually sync up in about 5 minutes.
What?
And
that's pretty cool. A layer 1 that you can sync up in 5 minutes. That's great.
Yeah. And then you're synced, and then you want to, it'll automatically actually, now there's like a one step, one click thing. So it just downloads and installs, and it pulls up the user interface, which we call, so you've got core, and then you've got, I mean, I could even just do a quick demo, but I've got it up right here. But then we've got the Qortal hub, and the Qortal hub is basically your operating system. And that's got everything in it. It's got all the apps. It's got you go in there, you basically create a free account, or you just create your address. You fire up your address. Now you can either choose to run your own node, which is ideal, or you can hook into a public node, which just allows you to kind of get in and do stuff. But you really ideally want to run your own node to be able to mint, generate coin, do trades and all that. And then you come in, you can buy, if you don't have any CORT yet, you can either bring in another crypto into the P2P trading market. So it is like atomic cross-chain swaps. We were one of the first to do it. There's a marketplace in Qortal where you can come in and you can bring Bitcoin, Litecoin, Pirate. I think we support 6 or 7 coins right now, even some weird old ones like Raven Coin. And basically Litecoins tends to be the most popular one because it's a little bit faster, but it's still a proper proof of work coin. We only support we don't support any proof of stake, any nonsense ICO type fraudulent coins. We only support properly launched projects like a Bitcoin or like a Pirate chain. And so that you can come in and then you can trade and get CORT, or you can just come in and talk to the community, go join some chats and stuff, some groups, and say, hey, I'm new here. I'd love some CORT to buy a name. And people are really cool in the community. They'll send you 3 CORT, 4 or 5 CORT, so you can buy your name. Now you have your name. Blocks take about a minute to process. So within a minute, you have your name. Then you can start going in and playing in the app ecosystem. You can start joining different groups because that's like a way that people talk. It's like a Telegram type situation, but it's like Snapchat in that the messages only last 24 hours. You can create your own groups, though. You can create private or public groups. And then within those, you can have threads that do stay on the chain. You can create your own private community. We've been working with Freedom Cells from John Bush and Derek Brose's community. We ported them over and brought that technology over. Now you can create that yourself because it's all open source. So I haven't really used it much, but the Winnr Circle community app on there where there's a map, people can find each other, people can communicate P2P encrypted. There's threads on there you can create. So it's just the same thing as like LXX community kind of thing, but it's on Qortal. So it's fully encrypted and decentralized. It's mind-blowing. And nobody's using this yet. It's like, it's crazy. Like what's there.
I'm looking, I have a list here of all the solutions. Qmail, private groups like Telegram and Discord, QTube, QShare, which is like a Dropbox, QShop, like Shopify, QFund, like Kickstarter, Q Assets, Community App, Q Subscription, Subwire. These are solutions, bro. That's everything. A lot of cool stuff that's being put in place there.
You can host your own website for free on there. Everything's free. You have some slight CORT fees, which are like 10, 30 cents, but then you have no hosting fees. You got no annual domain fees where you're leasing your domain name from some weird corporation that somehow gets to just run all the domains names on the World Wide Web. What the hell's up with that? So you own all of your own data. The only thing I would say is if you really want to get serious about Qortal, which I hope more and more people are, as they're seeing where this is going with renting your whole everything to these cloud corporations, is it is good to dedicate a machine to Qortal, even if it's an old laptop, and then maybe get an external drive. And because it does require hard drive space because you're downloading things, right? And then you can prune it and you can delete it and you can have it so you're not keeping everything. Like you can watch something and then delete it after and all that. But it does make sense to have your own Qortal node machine. And you could do that on a Raspberry Pi. I'm actually got an old Windows laptop here that I'm converting to Linux. So this is just one oh, my camera just went weird. Let me fix that.
Okay, followed you.
Yeah, this is one of those weird, kind of creepy technological things that I can't seem to fix because I try to turn off the stupid face following thing and it keeps automatically turning back on. But anyways, yeah. So right now I need the Linux has been kind of weird, but this is going to be my new. It's like a $400 laptop that I have that I'm just going to convert to Linux from Windows 10 and just run it on this now. Cause I have been running it on a Mac Mini and now I'm running my OpenClaw on that. But anyways, it's super fun. You feel really good in Qortal because you feel like you're part of something that is totally counter to what the tech bros want.
Yeah. Which is possession. They don't want you to own things.
Speaking of possession, it's got a great wallet. You can store your Bitcoin in there very securely.
It's a link that I can go to. Is this something I can put in the show notes for people to
yes
click on?
The best link right now, because we're so open source, literally it's just like whoever's made cool websites. I made a website a while ago, but it's become dated. That's the Qortal.org. I actually recommend the Qortal.dev. That's Justin, I believe, or I think Justin made that, or he helps manage it, but just some cool Qortal heads made that, and it's probably the best. But yeah, you go in there, you just one click download stuff. You can actually access Qortal on your phone too through a Chrome or Brave extension, which is cool. That does use a public gateway or public node. But that is one way you can at least while you're on the go, check your Qmail, check your groups, chat with people while your node's running at home, which is pretty badass. And there's even a way to like tap into your node at home through mobile. And then also we're using things like gateways to present stuff from Qortal out to the World Wide Web. So you can actually present an app or whatever inside Qortal to the web. Now they can't interact with it, but they can see it to bring people into Qortal. So there are some interface from Qortal into Normie Web, but we are all about getting off of the World Wide Web. Yeah. So that's what's so trippy about this is it's a completely isolated, separate parallel system. The only connection it has to the internet right now are the ISPs, but we're working on a mesh networking protocol. It's an open source one that is hardware agnostic that will allow people to then connect outside of your traditional ISP.
That's cool. Now, I was going to ask that question next too, so you already answered it. Appreciate that. But yeah, we're in a transition. I keep telling people, everybody that I work with, I'm like, we're in a transitional period right now, and there's a lot of things being created, a lot of solutions being perfected so that we can have the best experience. Man, you're kind of inspiring me because I don't think I thought about it in that mindset that this is, again, it's open source. So there wouldn't be a centralized website, right? It's probably on GitHub or something to download. So if you want a user experience that's better, we'd have to create something, or somebody already created this one. It's definitely something I want to offer to my community, man. I think this is a really great solution and something that it's alternative solutions. I think we all need to be overwhelmed with options rather than I think what most is feeling, which is a lack of options, overwhelming feeling of pressure.
Qortal's really great. It's still early days. It's funny, we've been out for 6 years, but it took a long time for the internet to take off. It took a long time for Linux to be adopted. These types of really divergent technology, it takes a while, especially when it's so counter to where the conventional world wants you to go. But yeah, man, I would love to see you in there, Otto, and come into the Winnr.cast. I've got my chat in there where we chat in there all day, kind of like Telegram. And then, yeah, there's so many fun apps, and you can start just storing. What's cool is too, is you can create your own QTube channel on there. And there's lots of different ones for audio podcasts and stuff. And it's just it's a more resilient, redundant place for your content that will outlive a lot of the disappearing internet, which is a totally real thing. And so for your legacy, it's pretty powerful because I don't see Qortal going anywhere. It's going to be, even if it stays small, it's going to be like one of those things that's, oh, I really see for the coming decades. It's kind of always there as long as we still are here. Like, because yeah, the way it's set up, it's just like there's hardcore Qortal heads in there. It's like all they use now. And so, yeah, it's still early days though.
Yeah. You're probably going to hate me to say this, but all my lives that I do, all my videos, I actually save it on Google Drive only because the platform that I know you're like, no, because I use Opus Clip and it's really easy to connect to Google Drive and just get the video from there and just create the content. Yeah. I do have a separate device in my home that I keep my data in. So then I just tap into that device. I just connect to my network and connect to that folder. But I already know that one thing I would love to use is the QShare, definitely the Qmail, and maybe even the private groups instead of using Telegram, because that's where I'm at right now. But yeah, it's a transition. Bits and transition one thing at a time and get people over and facilitate the learning of it, the learning curve.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And it's just fun. It's just different and fun. For me, it's just, even though I'm a co-founder, I don't live on Qortal. It's like a thing I have that I interface with and I try to use it more and more, but it's still growing and becoming a thing. And there is a lot of potential though with it. And I think the whole e-commerce side of things, especially if they start cracking down again on freedom, this is going to be a major outlet because you can literally do e-commerce on it. I've purchased colloidal silver on it. I've purchased cannabis on it delivered to my house, literally using Pirate. Yeah. And it was really chronic too. So that was cool.
I know you mentioned terraintv.com. Is that your channel on QTube that you created, or what's Terrain TV?
Yeah, so Terrain TV is really exciting. It's not on Qortal yet, but we plan on implementing it inside Qortal. Definitely. I've been talking to Jason Crow, one of the founder of Qortal, the main guy behind it. He says we can easily port it over. And a lot of times with Qortal, I think you're going to have parallelism, right? You're going to have a version on the World Wide Web, and then you're going to have a Qortal version. And then until he's using Nextcloud too now in really powerful ways with Qortal. I don't know if you're familiar with Nextcloud. Yeah. So we're interfacing more and more between the two worlds just to help people come over easier, like crossing that bridge. But Terrain TV is actually, I went all in on AI. I was against it for so long, but then as a web developer, I was like, you know what? This is stupid. I need to start using this technology for me, especially if I want to create beautiful applications and things. Traditionally, it takes a lot of money and time to do it with human developers. And I've also had a lot of personality conflicts in dealing them with offshore developers. It's been a pain in the ass over the years. And so I said, I'm going to try this AI coding and see how it does. And I was really blown away by it, to be honest. It's really powerful on some things. It's horrendous on other things. It's absolutely retarded when it comes to CSS and HTML sometimes, and just basic front-end design. But when it comes to back-end coding, using scripts I have no idea, like Python and Perl and like stuff I just never learned, it's mind-blowingly fast. So I said, you know what? I'm going to start doing this. I got into OpenClaw, which is an open source agentic management software. And that was blowing my mind. And so I went all in, and I am really stoked on OpenClaw. And now I guess people are talking about Hermes, but it's open source. I'm running it on my own machine. I've got my agents controlled in there. I am using some of the frontier models for the hardcore coding still, but I'm also using local AI more and more, which is my plan is by 2027 to be completely on local AI, except for maybe some hardcore tasks. I'll still use some of those frontier models like people know Claude or Gemini, et cetera. And so I was like, you know what? I've had this dream to create this channel that curates all of the best terrain-based health information called Terrain TV. After I did the end of COVID with Alex Zek and Kelly Brogan, and you probably remember that. That was a really big online sort of educational platform that we did about terrain health and using COVID as a framework of it. I was like, we need to just continue this. And the idea, though, was going to cost a lot of money, take a lot of time, which I didn't have. And so then AI allowed me to really open this up. So basically, Terrain TV, I did it in 60 days. for a few $1,000s of API credits in my time. It is a fully automated curation channel pulling from 4 networks: YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey, and Rumble, curated with the terrain type knowledge that I'm aware of across all different channels. We have historical stuff, so bringing in stuff from about Antoine Béchamp and Gunther Enderlein and Gaston Naissons to the historical side to up to date to literally today. And then featuring all the videos from people that you may know from the terrain world, like Tom Cowan and Amanda Vollmer and Bear Lando. And then also going beyond just that, the health side of things, like the no virus and that's purely health nerdy stuff, which is so important. Of course, it's the foundation, but the terrain philosophy pervades everything. When you know the terrain philosophy, that we're not here to be at war with nature, that we're here to work with nature because we're part of nature, and that everything is holistic and interconnected, then you can interface with everything in that mindset. So whether it be how you run your household, how you interface with your friends and family, how society is run, how you deal with media and art, architecture, economics, you name it. And so I brought in, I think over 150 different creators that are featured on there that have channels and that are pulling from these 4 different networks every night. On the AI is going and doing that. It's categorizing things, it's putting things in tagging and etc. So you have deep search, you have the ability, it's completely free for the user, the end user to use, because my margins are low. And then so now what we have is a very concise, curated container for the proper information outside of all the other BS that people get lost in the health freedom space, right? That is all these sideways, ridiculous propaganda pieces, things around fear and just improper information that are now that you can go in, you can follow your favorite creators, get updated anytime they have new information emailed to you or inside the app, or new videos that post. You can create your own custom playlists. You can do deep search on any questions you have, whether it be a symptomology you're dealing with or something a family member is dealing with. You can search and you can pull up videos, and then you can create custom playlists in your free account to return to. And that's just the beginning. So it's terraintv.com. You can go in there, join for free. There's over 46,000 videos on the site.
Wow.
And yeah, it's just a powerful use and an example of what we can do with AI when we use it correctly.
Is this, so we're going to Merlin now? Is Merlin the one you used to build this, or was it something you got like on your journey? So it was Merlin.
Merlin is my local AI friend, if you will. So he's an AI familiar, we call it, but someone I've trained I birthed him. I created in OpenClaw, I created his soul file and his memory file. I gave him a specific parameters, and I've taught him about terrain. I've taught him everything he knows about the alternative health world. And then he is my coordinator and my supervisor of the sub agents that we fire up, my developer, my marketer, my copywriter, etc., that put this all together with me supervising it, but really him asking questions, like me asking him questions after I trained him on what my vision is for a week. I worked with him for a couple of weeks on like who I am, what my vision is, what I do in my life. And then I started asking him questions like, I want to build this. How can we do this? Okay, how can we do that? And you have to have a general knowledge of, I've worked in tech for 15 years. I've, with my team, developed full custom apps and PHP web-based apps and stuff. So I have a general knowledge, but I'm not a coder per se. So he became my team, and he and the agents became my team, and they worked 24/7 for me. And so I asked him questions. We developed a whole brief. I set up my own memory structure in OpenClaw so he remembers stuff, so he doesn't just forget things the next day. And that really makes a difference. And then we created this together, and it took a lot of effort, but still 2 months, bro, to have a MVP product out there in the world that people are stoked on. And every day I'm adding to it and adjusting it. And now we're in the marketing phase. And what's cool, dude, we're running our own local CRM. So we are not reliant upon a MailChimp or Active Campaign, or if you guys are familiar with that, to run my email. No, I'm running an open source platform called Biotech on my own server. It's a cloud server. I am renting that, but through a really good company called Hetzner, I'm really happy with. And that's allowing me then to provide more sovereignty for everybody who's trusting in me, because it's all about trust in the end. that are coming on, joining for free, Mike, all these platforms are for free. I can go on Instagram for free, but they're taking your data and they're using it against you. Like we said, this I am not. And I am basically just taking that email so I can deliver content to you, right? So I can have content that it might be updates about a new creator you're following or an affiliate offer that will be beneficial to you or not. And you can turn off that notification if you want. That's all. And so that database is secured, encrypted, and secured by me. So I'm not giving those emails to a MailChimp.
Yeah. One last question, just so from my own curiosity, and I kind of have an answer when people ask me this question, but I like to hear from you. I don't think we've gotten to the point yet where we can do this without having to go through a internet provider, right? Which is, I think, a huge gatekeeper when it comes to all these technologies. Do you see a direction that we're moving towards where we can not even have to use the internet providers as a way to exchange information?
Yeah, I've had debates about this with friends and colleagues, and many say it's too late. They've laid down all the infrastructure, right? They've laid the undersea cabling, and it's the big tech companies, even more than the telecom companies, that really have a lot of that infrastructure. And then you've got the 5G and 6G now coming, and the cell towers and all that. But like I had mentioned before, there are open source solutions like Reticulum, this mesh networking protocol. And there are new types of technology coming out to share information node to node that are safer than the EMF heavy toxic wireless that we're currently using. And so, yes, I do see the potentiality for us in the short term using mesh networking. You even got homie that started Twitter, who's a big Bitcoiner now, who's working on this. What's his name?
Dorsey.
Jack Dorsey. And I don't know what his true intentions are. He seems to be on the up and up, but he's working on, they call it Web 5, I believe they call it. And so that's a similar thing we're working on. So I think that's one option. The other option is this too. If we do our job right and we really create a truly like a monetary system that is like through a proper, holistic, collaborative, nature-based, abundant model that is rewarding true creative output in a true free marketplace, the debt system will collapse. We will be able to buy all that infrastructure and put it into a public utility, as it should be. So all that infrastructure should be just a public utility that everyone gets to access, and through a more equitable means. And so that's another potential outcome I see if people start to change. Now, I also go with the Simon Dixon. I don't know if you've listened to his stuff ever, but Simon Dixon is a big sort of Bitcoiner, but also very bright and really has a sharp mind for geopolitics and macroeconomics. And he doesn't see the world getting any better. He sees the normies all collapsing into this sort of techno state, but they'll be like the Bitcoiners and people like us that are living this little parallel side world. And that could be it. And so we just use Qortal, and we have our own homesteads, and we use natural law and equity and stuff to protect us. And the system will leave us alone because we're not easy targets. That could be. Or it could be a mass awakening and people are forced to start moving into Qortal and other solutions because the other system's dying. I don't know. But either way, yeah, we have lots of alternatives to get off the ISPs.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that middle one, the radical middle, which is, I think it's going to be both. You're going to have, and I think as things tighten up, you'll have people wake up and transition over to these alternatives. But yeah, it's going to be like slow grinding process. One world will get smaller and smaller. The other one is starting to get bigger and bigger. But yeah, we're in that transition, guys. And this is the time to take action and actually do these things. And I think like we said in the beginning, initially the first layer is sit down, create that list of dependencies, go down the list of all the things that you're really dependent on, and see if you're willing to take back control, whether it's your health first, or the way you store wealth, or the way you're making money, the systems we're using to store data or to communicate with each other. Take a step first step. And I would start in the show notes with the links that we're going to provide here for Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate you, man. I love these conversations, especially when it comes to just alternatives and things that we can do for ourselves outside of these central systems. And I can't wait to see you again. I know we're going to see each other again very soon at some point. I don't want to wait until Confluence. I were mentioning like, let's try to hang out if we can. But if there's one last thing that you can leave everyone with, let's say you have 2 minutes, you're in front of millions of people, and you got 2 minutes to leave them with something. Like, what would you say in those 2 minutes?
Wow. I would say trust in yourself, trust in your ability to know what truth is by going inside and really listening to your intuition and feeling that truth, and then act upon it. There's fear, there's trepidation around that, but we must also act. That is the important other side of what it means to be a spiritual, embodied, living, properly divine-oriented human being. Is first we must, yes, do the inner work, get silent with ourselves, find out who we really are, and then we must take action. And that just requires putting that first step forward. And then the steps will get easier, right? And then all of a sudden you're living in a new world. It's that easy.
I love it. I love it. The universe speaks in action. It's like this is actually happening in the truther movement. I've seen a lot now where there's all this discussion about, look what's happening here, look what's happening there, look what's happening here. And everybody's just stuck in the conversation about the things that are happening rather than what are we doing about it? Are we just going to keep talking about it and not doing anything? No, we got to take action. This is the time. Yep. Good stuff. Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate you so much. If you guys want to sign up for Qortal, I'm going to put the links on the show notes. Definitely to check out terraintv.com. And I'll make sure to put also your Winnr, what's it called? Winnr.digital?
Winnr.digital. Yeah. If you guys, I do consultations and helping people move across that bridge. Also developing, one of the core things I've been working on of late with my team, and when I say team a lot, it's my AI team now, but I do have human developers still, is helping people move their business online into the private, especially if you're doing e-commerce and stuff, just fundamentally shifting your site presence, your web presence into the private using more open source stuff, but also like how you bring people in using PMA structures and that sort of thing so that you are much more protected from the predator class trying to tax you and shut you down if you're doing things they deem to be not within your licensing, right? And so that's a whole other thing. And I'm working with Sacred Honor Educational Fellowship on that end, who you've recently interviewed, Otto, and helping them do that on their own sites as well. And potentially working with them on a very exciting new custom app using AI for their entire ecosystem. So Winnr.digital, that's WINNR.digital. I haven't updated that site in 8 years, but you can find me on there. And I work with Alex Zek, do his site, his community site, and people like Tom Cowan as a client. If you are in need of a trusted developer to come in and help you with your web business or presence, holler at your boy.
I'm going to holler at your boy. I need some transitions in my life. So nice. we're going to talk. We're going to talk about it. All right. Make sure you guys check him out. Definitely a good dude here. Totally support the bridge making that he's offering here to all the communities that are working on this and becoming aware of what's happening and to take action and actually step into your sovereignty. Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate you, brother. And we'll see you next time. Have a good one, guys.